He built one of the most powerful tech companies in California. He made deals that shaped cities. He never forgot a name, never missed a number, never looked back, until the elevator opened, and the girl in the navy skirt looked up, and his world stopped. She didn't know him, but her eyes were his. Same color, same shape, same quiet fire. And beside her, the woman he left without a word. The only woman who ever made silence feel like a sentence. That was the moment Rael Donovan realized he had a daughter, and she was interviewing for a job at his company. Welcome back to Mr. Charles Stories, where we tell American stories that aren't just about wealth or success, but about second chances, quiet redemption, and the kind of truths that can change your life. This one is about a man who never planned to be a father, a woman who raised her, child with grace and no help, and a daughter whose presence rewrote everything. What happens when the past walks back into the room wearing your eyes? Would you run from it, or finally stand still? Stick with this story. You'll see what presence can do, and why sometimes showing up changes everything. If stories like this make you feel something, don't just watch, be part of it. Like this video, comment below your thoughts, and subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more powerful narratives like this one. San Diego, 14 floors above Market Street. The rooftop buzzed with soft jazz, distant sirens, and the clinking of glasses held by people who forgot how to leave work behind. Annika Templeton stood near the edge of the terrace, watching the city lights blink like a tired heart. She wasn't the type who usually showed up at after-hours events, but tonight was different. The startup she worked for had closed a funding round. The founders were celebrating, and the finance department, her department, was invited to the mix. She wore her usual dark slacks, a cream blouse buttoned all the way up, and a soft black blazer. She sipped ginger ale, never champagne, and stayed tucked near the glass railing instead of mingling. People called her focused. They meant quiet. They meant invisible. They meant she doesn't need help. But that night, her stillness caught someone's attention. It started with a voice. Low, calm, male. You don't drink? She turned. The man was tall, maybe late 30s. Blue suit, no tie. Clean, stillness in his stance. Not overdressed, not loud. The kind of quiet that made people look twice. No, she replied. He nodded, stepped beside her. I figured, he said. You're the only one who's lasted more than 10 minutes by this railing. She didn't laugh, but she didn't walk away either. Long night? He asked. I like watching cities from high places. He glanced out at the lights with her. Me too. They didn't trade names right away. He wasn't one of the team. She knew everyone in the company, and he wasn't listed in any finance meeting. Still, he stood like someone who didn't need an introduction. They talked about architecture, about how some buildings in downtown San Diego were designed without soul, how others had a warmth to them, corners with stories, and books. He asked her what she read. She said she liked books where women got to be quiet and still won. He smiled at that. So do I, he said. He asked nothing personal. She offered nothing, but the silence between them started folding into something soft. Back inside, the crowd laughed louder. Music picked up. Annika stepped away from the noise and the man followed. No questions, no pushing. They took the elevator down alone. By the time the doors opened, neither said goodbye. They walked into the city like two shadows caught in the same current. He held her hand. She didn't pull away. The hotel wasn't far. She didn't ask if it was his or if he'd booked it that night. The room was clean. The curtains were open. City lights spilled across the bed without shame. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't desperate. She simply said yes. To warmth. To quiet. To a night without planning. They undressed like people who didn't need to impress. No performance. Just breath and heat and connection. No names. No promises. No guilt. She woke alone. The ginger ale still on her breath. A faint crease on the pillow beside her. A scribbled napkin on the dresser with a phone number. She looked at it once. Folded it. dropped it in the trash can without a word. Back in her apartment that morning, she showered, ate toast, went to work, finished budget revisions. No one noticed she'd changed, and neither did she. Not yet. 3 weeks later, she was late. 4 weeks in, she bought a test. 5 minutes after that, she sat on her bathroom floor with her arms around her knees, silent. She didn't call the number. She never opened the napkin again. Rael Donovan. That was the name she remembered from a client list, a venture capitalist. He was in the business of risk. She wasn't. He moved through fast deals. She didn't. And this child, this life she now carried, was not a deal. It was hers. Annika didn't cry. She took time off. She researched. She walked to a clinic alone. She listened to options. She went home with her choice already made. She'd raise the baby. She'd do it on her own. No noise, no drama, no permission asked. At 8 months, she left the startup. Too many questions, too much tension. At 9 months, she gave birth to a daughter. She named her Sarai. The name meant princess. But to Annika, it meant peace. Not the kind people see. The kind you build slowly. Quietly, one choice at a time. Sarai came into the world on a Wednesday morning. No complications, no dramatic labor stories. Just a sharp cry, a healthy heart, and a calm grip when they placed her in Annika's arms. Annika had never felt peace move like that before. She didn't have a hospital room full of visitors. She didn't want one. Just a nurse who nodded with a knowing smile and a folded baby blanket with Sarai's name stitched into the edge. She stayed 3 nights. Read every page of the discharge papers. Then took her daughter home. The apartment was small. 1 bedroom, white walls. Barely enough space for the crib she bought second-hand and repainted ivory. She returned to work 6 weeks later, part-time at a bookkeeping firm downtown. She carried Sarai in a cloth sling, pumping milk during lunch breaks, walking. 3 extra blocks to avoid street noise, so Sarai could nap against her chest. At night, she worked spreadsheets. She didn't complain. She didn't ask for help. She simply adjusted. By the time Sarai was 2, she could build towers out of blocks that matched height with the coffee table. She never babbled. When she spoke, her words came out full and formed. At 4, she could write her name. At 5, she asked why her skin was slightly deeper in tone than her mother's. Annika told her the truth. You were born from something quiet, but real. Sarai didn't press. She never did. She accepted people for what they gave, never what they withheld. Annika never lied to her. But she never spoke of Rael either. Not once. He had left with silence. She had honored it, but not in anger, in survival. Her daughter didn't need a wound where there could be wholeness. Sarai grew, thoughtfully, carefully. She liked order. She made her bed without being asked, organized her pencils by shade, read early, typed without looking by age 8. She didn't like too much noise, but she loved machines, old ones, broken ones. Annika once brought home a discarded printer. By morning, Sarai had taken it apart and labeled every piece on the floor, with sticky notes, scanner head, feed roller, power board. She was 9. School became too easy. By middle school, Sarai was testing out of math classes. Annika enrolled her in a community coding program after work. It met in the library twice a week. That's where Sarai met Mr. Jamal, the first mentor who said the words Annika would never forget. She's not smart. She's built for this. He meant it. He called in a favor at a local tech incubator. Sarai was 13 when she presented her first app idea, an educational tool for students with ADHD. She had seen a friend struggle and wanted to solve it. No push from anyone, no request for reward. She simply saw a problem and designed the start of a solution. At home, Annika never overpraised, never bragged. Instead, she supported from the side, steady, warm, present. When Sarai's project got local press attention, she folded the article and kept it in her wallet. Not on the fridge, not in a frame, just close enough to carry. By 15, Sarai's name was submitted for a statewide mentorship competition. She didn't win. She placed top 10. Still, one of the judges, an older black woman from a private tech firm, slipped her a card quietly at the end of the event. "You're better than one win," the woman said. "Here's something that might be a fit, a program called Future Builders, backed by major companies. Low profile, high quality." Sarai applied without telling anyone. Her portfolio included notes from 5 years' worth of passion projects, a handwritten cover letter, no connections, just pure work. The response came 4 weeks later. "Congratulations. You've been selected to interview for the Future Builders Initiative. Your interview will take place at Donovan Tech headquarters, San Francisco location. You are one of 12 students selected statewide." She read it once, then ran to the kitchen, letter in hand. Anika stared at the name. Donovan Tech. It tugged something at the back of her mind. Faint, fuzzy, but she pushed it away. She smiled and hugged her daughter, said what any proud mother would. "You earned this. We'll be ready." The night before the trip, Sarai ironed her navy skirt and white blouse. She packed her portfolio with printed copies, a flash drive, and a few photos from her earlier builds. She printed her resume and tucked in her handwritten letter. Anika watched from the doorway. "You nervous?" she asked. Sarai shook her head. "Just want to make a good impression." Anika stepped in, fixed the collar, then whispered, "You already do." They arrived early at Donovan Tech, a tall silver and glass building tucked into a clean side street. The air smelled like morning and possibility. Inside, they checked in. Sarai signed her name and was told to wait with the others. Parents were invited to sit in a quiet holding area. Anika sat with her hands folded on her lap. Her eyes scanned the glass walls, the soft leather seats, the minimalist wood-paneled ceilings. Her heart was steady, until her eyes found the company name again on a frosted plaque. Donovan. That word. That name. She tilted her head slightly. It couldn't be. Could it? And just then, the elevator chimed. The doors slid open. A man stepped out. Sharp suit, silvered hair at the temples, calm gait, controlled presence. Rael Donovan. Her eyes met his, and he stopped walking. Rael Donovan didn't freeze often. He'd walked into billion-dollar meetings, stared down hostile investors, and negotiated international partnerships without flinching. But when the elevator doors opened that morning and he saw her, his body forgot how to move. The girl in the navy skirt. Eyes lifted, uncertain smile, a touch of nerves in how she held her portfolio. But that wasn't what stopped him. It was her eyes, that grey-green, that exact shade, like mirrors of his. His assistant, Logan, whispered near his shoulder, "Sir, that's one of the mentees. First-round introductions start in 3 minutes." Rael didn't respond. His eyes had shifted, from the girl to the woman beside her, seated, legs crossed, calm, stillness wrapped in strength. Anika, older, yes, a line near her mouth. Her eyes a little deeper, but the same woman who stood on that hotel balcony 16 years ago, skin lit by the city's glow, her voice quiet and clipped. She didn't look shocked. She looked ready. Rael cleared his throat and stepped forward. He extended his hand, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Good morning." Anika looked up, didn't stand, didn't blink. "Mr. Donovan," she said. "Long time." And with that, the earth tipped under his feet. Sarai turned, confused. "You know each other?" Rael opened his mouth, but no words came. Anika glanced at her daughter, then back at him. "We've met," she said. Simple, dismissive, measured. Rael nodded, barely. He turned to Sarai. "You're here for the mentorship?" She smiled lightly. "Yes. I'm Sarai Templeton." Templeton. She didn't have his name. Of course she didn't. She had no reason to. His gaze dropped to her portfolio, held tight against her chest. You came prepared." Sarai nodded. "I've wanted to be here for a long time." He swallowed. Hard, The world buzzed around him. Other mentees arriving, staff checking lists, coffee machines hissing in the background, but Rael heard nothing clearly. The girl in front of him was his daughter. He excused himself quickly, said something to Logan, something vague. He walked down the hallway, past 3 doors, then ducked into his office and shut it behind him. For the first time in a long time, Rael sat and didn't move. His hands trembled as he pulled open his browser. He searched her name. Sarai Templeton. First result, a regional high school science fair win, a grainy photo of a younger version of her holding a trophy, her smile awkward but proud. Second, a local library STEM program feature. She stood beside other kids, all with matching t-shirts, but her eyes still stood out. By the third article, Rael couldn't breathe. Everything about her, how she stood, how she explained her code in a video clip, even how she tucked her hair behind her ear, felt familiar, but he had never been there to know it firsthand. He leaned back, eyes shut. That night, he remembered it clearly. She'd barely spoken, but her presence had silenced everything else around him. Her hands had been gentle. Her goodbye had never come, because he left before it could. And now, here was a girl, 16 years later, his daughter. No DNA test needed, just one look. He looked down at his phone. He still had the same number, the same email. He had left the napkin with his contact info on the hotel dresser. He thought, maybe she'd call, but nothing ever came. And now he knew why. She hadn't needed him. She had made her choice. He stood slowly, walked to the window. The city looked different now, colder, smaller. He pulled out his phone and texted Logan, "Find out if Sarai Templeton's mother is available to speak, privately." That afternoon, his assistant returned with a short reply. She said yes, but not here. She gave a location, a park near the marina. 6 p.m., Rael typed back, "I'll be there." He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He drove himself. No driver, no assistant. The park was nearly empty. Just wind, benches, and that smell of salt water and dry grass. Boats swayed gently in the background. She was already seated under a fig tree. No sunglasses, no defense. She didn't rise when he arrived. She just glanced at him once, then back at the water. Rael approached slowly, sat beside her. "You figured it out?" she asked. He nodded. "The second I saw her." Annika said nothing for a while, just silence. The kind that didn't need filling. "You didn't call," she added softly. "You didn't leave your number," he replied. "You didn't stay." He nodded again. There was no defense. Annika finally turned her face toward him. "I raised her alone. I can see that she's not a project. I don't think she is. She's not your redemption arc. I'm not asking her to be." She studied him for a second, then faced forward again. Rael leaned his elbows on his knees. "I'd like to know her," he said. Annika didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was even. "She's not some blank slate. She has opinions, boundaries, beliefs. I wouldn't take that from her. Then start by being present. No big speeches, no grand gestures. Just show up. Or don't." He turned to her. "I will." Rael didn't rush. The next time he saw Sarai, she was sitting in the Donovan Tech Idea Lab, surrounded by screens, whiteboards, and 3 other mentees sketching out app prototypes. She was focused, elbows on the table, one hand supporting her head, the other typing at a pace that showed this wasn't new to her. He stood in the doorway for a moment, saying nothing. "Sir?" one of the engineers asked. "You're here for the program check-in?" Rael nodded. He kept his voice neutral. "Just observing today." He walked the room once, gave light nods, then paused near Sarai. "You have a clean interface," he said. She looked up, surprised, then smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Donovan," and went right back to work. He didn't stay long, didn't hover, didn't disrupt, just watched, and left. But it became a rhythm. Every Friday, during the internship program's open lab hours, Rael passed through. Not every time. Not predictably, but enough. Sometimes, he left a comment on a printout. Other times, he simply asked questions. What are you solving for? Who is your audience? Why this over that? Not to test her, to understand her. Sarai didn't know why the CEO kept dropping by, but she didn't mind. At home, Anika noticed. Sarai smiled more on Fridays. She talked about her ideas more. I think he actually reads what I write, she said one evening, tossing her backpack down. Anika stirred the pasta on the stove, steady. That's rare for someone in charge. Sarai nodded. Yeah. He listens. Anika's hand paused over the pot. Then keep talking, she said softly. Rael kept his distance outside the program. No weekend visits. No sudden check-ins. He knew he hadn't earned that. Not yet. But in the lab, in that 2-hour window, he gave Sarai what he could. Presence. Attention. Respect. One week, she pitched a new app idea. A scholarship finder with no ads, no selling of student data, no parent registration walls. She called it Clean Slate. I want it to be for the kids who don't have a dad to co-sign the FAFSA, she said bluntly to the room. Rael froze for half a second, then nodded. That's smart. Direct. Needed. Thanks. Later that night, he looked up the average number of students who lose access to grants because of unreported parental data. He read 6 reports, then donated anonymously to a non-profit that matched funds for low-income high school applicants. He said nothing about it. He never mentioned it to Sarai. Didn't need to. It wasn't about credit. It was about doing the work her presence reminded him mattered. Anika met him again 2 weeks later. Same park. Same time. She didn't sit right away. You've been showing up. I said I would. She doesn't know yet. She will. Anika studied him. You're doing this slowly. Rael met her eyes. Because it has to be real. She finally sat down. Then keep showing up. He nodded. But this time, he added one more line. When do I tell her? Anika exhaled quietly. When she already loves who you are. Not your title. Not your regret. Rael didn't argue. He just listened, then asked, how long did it take you to forgive me? Anika looked away. I'm still deciding. That night, Sarai sent Rael a follow-up email with her updated mock-ups. He replied, Your UX flow improved. Proud of this direction. Sarai smiled at her screen. She didn't know why his words mattered, but they did. Rael shut his laptop after replying, and sat in the dark for a while. Not haunted. Just still. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking of the next move. He was thinking of this one, and how not to ruin it. Some truths take years to reach the surface. Do you know someone whose presence meant more than any apology? Rael can't fix the past, but he can show up now. If you were in Sarai's shoes, would you want to know? Tell us below. Like this story. Comment your thoughts and subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories, where we believe presence speaks louder than promises. The internship was only 12 weeks long, but by the 5th week, Sarai had grown into the Donovan tech space like it was hers. She no longer hesitated when speaking up. She stopped second-guessing her wireframes. She started listening with confidence, not for approval but for improvement. Rael watched it happen in real time. From behind glass walls, from across lab benches, from corners where he let her lead, he'd become quiet furniture in her world. Familiar, but never imposing. And she let him in, word by word. You helped me figure out the navigation tree, she told him one afternoon after a presentation. He shook his head. I didn't help. You listened to yourself. I just repeated what was already there. She smiled, a little lopsided. That's still help. Rael nodded and swallowed the urge to say more. That evening, Sarai and Anika sat on the balcony of their apartment, bowls of leftover rice on their laps. Is it strange, Sarai asked, that I've learned more from one man in 5 weeks than I have from most people my whole life. Annika kept her voice level. What makes you say that? He listens. He doesn't interrupt. He doesn't explain things like I'm fragile. Annika's throat tightened. That's rare, she said. Sari nodded, tapping her chopsticks against her bowl. It makes me wonder sometimes. Wonder what? Sarai shrugged. I don't know. What kind of person I'd be if I'd had someone like that earlier. Annika didn't flinch. She just nodded once, then stood up and carried both bowls inside. Rael felt it too. The pull. The temptation to confess. But every time he considered it, he stopped himself with the same question. Does she trust me yet? Or just the version of me she's allowed to see? He didn't want to steal her trust with one reveal. He wanted to earn it before the reveal broke her open. So, he stayed steady, present, and quiet. The Friday before mid-program evaluations, Sarai led a mock pitch for her app. 4 mentors sat in as panelists, Rael included. She stood up in a clean navy blouse, sleeves rolled, hair tied loosely back. She clicked through her deck, explained her interface logic, cited research, even acknowledged her app's weak spots. Rael watched every second, and when she finished, he asked just one question. How will you protect the data of the users you claim to care about? Sarai answered without hesitation. No storage, no sale. Everything runs local or expires in-app. People shouldn't have to give up their identity to earn a chance. Rael nodded. Slow. Then, you're not just a builder, he said. You're a protector. After the session, the other mentors left. Sarai gathered her laptop and cords. Rael lingered. You do realize, he said, this app would have helped a lot of kids I knew growing up. Sarai glanced up. You grew up needing scholarships? He smiled faintly. No. I grew up thinking they were for other people. She tilted her head. You don't strike me as someone who was ever locked out of anything. Rael's voice lowered. Everyone's locked out of something. Even the people with the keys. Sarai stared at him for a second, then said, That sounds personal. He nodded once. It is. She didn't ask more. She closed her laptop. See you next Friday. I'll be here. As she walked out of the room, Rael sat back down and exhaled. Later that night, he sent a message to Annika. She's ready. Not for the truth, for the person who tells it. Annika read it 3 times before responding. Then tell her, but tell her with care. He typed, then deleted, typed again. When? Annika replied. When you can say it without shaking. Rael stood at the edge of his balcony, one hand on the rail. San Francisco shimmered below him. He thought of what Sarai said about someone like him earlier. He thought of what he missed, and who he could be now. The next Friday wasn't just another visit. It was the start of the end of pretending. Sarai noticed things, always had, details other people skipped over. The way a hand tapped when someone was nervous, the shift in someone's breathing when they were caught off guard, the subtle twitch in a voice when words weren't fully honest. And lately, she noticed Rael Donovan, not as the CEO, not as a title, but as a presence, a man who didn't take up too much space, yet somehow filled the room. A man who saw past code and numbers and asked her about why she built what she built. And she liked him. Not in the way teenage girls liked older figures, but in the way people noticed a mirror that didn't distort them. One Friday, she forgot her flash drive, left it on the lab table. Rael found it, waited until the last mentee left, then walked it out to the sidewalk. Sarai blinked when she saw him. I forgot it, didn't I? He handed it over without a word. You didn't have to. I wanted to. She stared at him. I've had mentors before, she said. But you don't act like one. Rael didn't flinch. What do I act like? She paused, like someone who knows what it's like to be overlooked, but refuses to let others be. He said nothing for a moment, then softly added, maybe that's because I've been both. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat in the dark with a pen in his hand. He wrote her name, Sarai, then drew a shaky circle around it. The truth was forming in his throat. It was time. The following week, he cancelled all Friday meetings. Sarai arrived like always, sleeves rolled, coffee in hand. The lab was quieter than usual. Rael stood by the back window. "Do you have 5 minutes?" he asked. Sarai raised an eyebrow. "Just 5?" He smiled faintly. "Let's try." She followed him to the Innovation Lounge, a smaller room lined with old tech photos and a few soft chairs. Rael closed the door gently. She sat down, arms folded lightly across her lap. He didn't pace, didn't stall, but he took one long breath before he spoke. "There's something I haven't told you." She tilted her head slightly but said nothing. "I met your mother, a long time ago, in San Diego." Sarai didn't blink. "Okay. I didn't know about you." She froze now. "What?" Rael's voice dropped lower. "I didn't know she was pregnant. I didn't leave because of that. I left not knowing what I was leaving." Sarai slowly leaned back in the chair. He continued, "I didn't deserve to find you this way, but the moment I saw you, I knew." "Knew what?" Sarai's lips parted, but the words stuck. Rael cleared his throat. "I'm your father." The room fell flat. No buzz, no screens, no noise, just the weight of 16 years, pressed into a truth neither one could reshape. Sarai looked down, then back up. "What?" "I didn't come looking to be forgiven. I didn't even know I'd been gone. But I'm here now. Not to erase the past, just to show up for the present." She didn't respond, didn't scream, didn't cry. She only asked one question. "Does my mom know you're telling me this?" "She does." "And she agreed?" Rael nodded. "She said I should tell you when I could say it without shaking." Sarai's voice was quiet. "Are you shaking?" He exhaled. "No." She stood slowly, picked up her flash drive, held it in both hands like it weighed more than it did. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to." She nodded, then turned to the door, paused, and without looking back, said, "I need time." He nodded. "Take all you need." She walked out, calm, quiet. He stayed in the chair long after she left. That evening, Sarai didn't speak much. Annika watched her eat half her dinner, then excuse herself. No questions, no pressure, just presence. In her room, Sarai stared at the flash drive on her desk. Next to it sat a faded article from years ago, one she printed back when she first dreamed of Donovan Tech. She picked it up again. This time, she read the byline, "Rael Donovan, CEO and founder," and stared at his photo. This man, her mentor, her father, her missing chapter. Sarai didn't say anything for 3 days. Not to her mother, not to her mentor, not to the girl in her class who always sat next to her at lunch and noticed the tension in her jaw. She didn't avoid Rael. She didn't seek him either. She simply moved through the days, breathing, thinking, testing the shape of this new reality in her mind. He said he was her father. He didn't cry, didn't plead, didn't call her baby or ask for a hug. He told the truth, then sat in it, and let her leave. That part stuck with her most, the silence he allowed, not as guilt, but as respect. Annika didn't push either. She waited like a woman who'd already fought this war once, and knew better than to insert herself into someone else's timeline for healing. She made tea in the evenings, replied to emails, refolded the towels Sarai left hanging, was present, but not loud. By Sunday morning, Sarai opened her laptop and pulled up a blank document. She didn't want to write a letter, but her mind couldn't speak yet. So she typed, "You didn't ask for anything. That's the only reason I'm not deleting your name from my life right now." She paused, deleted the sentence, started again. "I'm not mad at you, but I don't know how to place you in my story." That one stayed. She didn't send it. She just saved it, minimized the screen, and opened her project files instead. By Wednesday, Rael had stopped checking his phone every 10 minutes. stopped rehearsing what else he could have said. He knew this part wasn't his. He could only hold space for it. He spent his hours reviewing company projections, approving internal software updates, drinking more coffee than usual, but he didn't chase her. He waited. On Friday, Sarai showed up to the lab. Same time, same rhythm. But this time, when Rael entered the room, she looked up. Directly, no smile, no coldness, just eye contact. A choice. He walked to her table. "Hey," he said gently. "Hey, how's the app?" "Stable. Clean. I added encryption layers, triple verified user data deletions." He nodded, impressed. She handed him a printout. "I thought you might want to see it." He took it. "Read it." Then said the one thing that mattered. "I'm proud of you." Sarai inhaled slowly and whispered, "I know." They didn't talk about the truth again that day. Not directly, but it floated between them, unhidden, unforced, present. After the session, she walked out first. He stayed behind, watching her go. Then his phone vibrated. A message from Anika. "You did the right thing. Now just keep showing up." He stared at the words and replied, "Every time she lets me." That evening, Sarai and Anika ate on the couch. Sarai picked at her food for a minute before finally asking, "Was it hard for you not to tell me?" Anika looked over gently. "Yes, but not because I didn't want you to know. I just didn't want you to carry more than you had to." Sarai nodded. "That night, when I met him, I didn't feel anything. You weren't supposed to, but now that I know, it's like I'm replaying everything with different lighting." Anika's face softened. "That's normal. Do you think he's changed?" Anika took a sip of tea before answering. "I think he's learning how not to leave again." Sarai didn't say anything for a while, then softly added, "I'm not ready to call him Dad. You don't have to, or even forgive him. You don't owe him that either." Sarai looked up. "But I might want to try." Anika smiled. "That's yours to decide." Later that night, Sarai pulled open the saved letter draft. She added one final line. "You can come to my school showcase if you want. It's at 4. She hit send, then turned off the light. The message came through at 9:13 p.m. Rael read it once. Then again, "You can come to my school showcase if you want. It's at 4. No emoji, no extra line. It felt like an open door and a warning all at once. He didn't reply, didn't need to. He'd be there. The showcase was hosted inside a community center tucked between two brick buildings on the quieter side of the city. Students from different programs had been invited to present their work, science projects, coding apps, engineering builds. The room was set up like a science fair but with folding chairs instead of judging booths. Rael arrived early. He didn't bring a driver. He wore no suit, no company pin, no staff, just jeans, a clean button-up, and time. He walked in quietly, head low, found a seat in the second row, far enough not to distract, close enough not to miss anything. Sarai's display stood near the front, labeled simply, "Clean Slate," a scholarship search tool that respects privacy by Sarai Templeton. The board had clean diagrams, color-coded charts, a QR code demo, and side notes printed in small fonts. Everything about it was simple, intentional, clear. He sat and waited. Parents trickled in. A few teachers greeted kids and waved at familiar faces. Nobody noticed Rael Donovan, and he liked it that way. Sarai arrived 10 minutes before presentation started. She wore a soft lavender blouse and dark jeans. Her hair was pulled back, not tight, just simple. She glanced across the chairs and saw him. No security, no assistants, just him. Present. She didn't wave, but her eyes held his for a second. And that was enough. One by one, students presented. A kid showed a robotic arm that could toss a tennis ball. Another demoed an educational game built for kids with dyslexia. Then it was Sarai's turn. She stepped forward, straightened her papers, and cleared her throat. Her voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. "My name is Sarai Templeton. And I built this app because I grew up watching my mom work late into the night to help me apply for every form of help she could find. I never once saw her ask for anything, but I saw her give me everything. Rael's hands tightened in his lap. Sarai continued, steady. This app doesn't ask for your social security number, or your guardian's income, or your location. It asks what you need and shows you what you qualify for. Nothing more, nothing less. She walked through her slides, pointed out security protocols, described the layered encryption, explained the reasons behind every color in the UI, then closed with a quiet breath. I built this for students like me, but I also built it for parents like mine, people who show up, quietly, fully, without applause. Rael didn't blink. The room clapped. She turned, walked back to her spot, and when she passed him in the aisle, she looked directly at him. No smile, just a soft glance, like a nod from someone who saw him now, and didn't flinch. After the event, people moved around. Parents took pictures. Students handed out flyers. Rael stood, didn't walk toward her, just waited where he was. She approached on her own, stopped in front of him, looked up. "Thank you for coming," she said. He nodded. "Thank you for building that." They stood quietly. Then Sarai said, "Do you want to get something to eat?" His voice didn't shake. "I'd like that." She turned to grab her bag, and for the first time since the truth, she stood beside him, not in confusion, not in anger, but in quiet recognition. Outside, the sun dipped low. They walked to a small Thai place a few blocks away. No crowd, no title, no need for anything more. Just father and daughter, starting something real. Together. They didn't talk much at dinner. The Thai place was quiet, soft jazz playing, lights warm, the smell of peanut sauce and lime drifting gently through the room. Sarai ordered pad see ew. Rael got chicken green curry, medium spice. The waitress poured water. Rael let her take the lead. She didn't rush, didn't ask questions. She ate quietly, pushing noodles across her plate between bites. And when she did speak, it wasn't about the app. It wasn't about the past. It was about her. "I used to think I wanted to build something big," she said. Rael listened, like an empire, something nobody could ignore. "But now, I think I just want to build something that lasts. Even if no one knows I did it." Rael nodded slowly. "That's usually what lasts the longest." She looked up, studied him for a second. "You seem different now than when I first met you. I probably am." "Why?" "Because I'm not performing anymore." She didn't smile, but her shoulders dropped just slightly. That was enough. The next day, Anika noticed Sarai washing her own mug, a habit she hadn't kept up since middle school. She placed it in the rack, then walked into the living room. "Are you okay?" Anika asked. Sarai nodded. "I'm not confused anymore." "Are you angry?" Sarai paused. "No. Just adjusting." Anika closed her laptop. "He didn't ask for this." "I know. And he didn't stay." "I know that too." Anika searched her daughter's face. "So what now?" Sarai shrugged. "I don't know what to call him, but I don't mind sitting across from him." Rael didn't text first that week. He didn't want to crowd her. But Thursday evening, Sarai sent him a photo of a notebook sketch, her redesign for the app dashboard. No caption, just the image. 30 seconds later, he replied, "Your spacing is clean. Colors look human. I like it." She replied with a thumbs up. That was their rhythm. Friday came. Rael showed up again for lab hours. Not as the CEO, not even as a mentor. He sat on the edge of a table while Sarai and 2 other students debated button positions and user logic. At one point, Sarai turned toward him and asked, "Do you remember how old you were when you wrote your first real code?" He nodded. 14. "I broke my parents' email server trying to build a spam filter." She laughed. A soft, short sound. "That feels on brand." He raised an eyebrow. "You think I was a chaos kid?" She didn't answer, just smirked, and turned back to her screen. Annika showed up early to pick Sarai up that afternoon. Rael noticed her through the glass, standing just outside the entryway. Same stillness, same posture as the park bench. He walked out quietly. "Hi." "Hi." She waited for a few seconds, then asked, "How's she doing with you?" Rael answered honestly. "She's letting me stay in the room. That's more than most get. She's sharp, but not cold. She's watching. That's how she protects herself." He nodded. "I don't want to rush it." Annika looked at him now. "Fully. Then don't. Just stay consistent. The rest is hers." That weekend, Sarai asked her mother something she hadn't asked in years. "Do we still have that old photo album?" Annika blinked. "The baby one?" Sarai nodded. Annika pulled it down from the top shelf in her closet. They sat on the floor, barefoot, flipping pages. One showed baby Sarai in a yellow onesie, holding a rattle. Another had toddler Sarai grinning at a cake, face covered in frosting. Sarai pointed to one page. That one. It was a faded shot. Sarai, age 6, in a local library, building something with wires and tape. Annika smiled. That was the broken walkie-talkie phase. "I remember," Sarai said. She took a photo of the picture, then added it to her apps Knew About Me slide. That night, she sent Rael a version of her updated deck. He replied, minutes later, "That's the slide that'll make them remember you." She stared at his message for a long moment, then typed, "Thanks for seeing it before I did." The next Friday, lab hours ran long. Sarai stayed behind after the other mentees packed up. She was finalizing a test version of her app and didn't want to rush the final compile. Rael lingered too, not hovering, just nearby. She closed her laptop at 6:17 p.m. He was still there. "Want to grab something to eat?" she asked. His answer was simple. "Sure." They walked to a corner diner, 3 blocks from the lab. No valet, no reservations, plastic menus, and laminated tabletops. Sarai didn't mind. Rael looked like he belonged anywhere. They ordered grilled cheese sandwiches and water with lemon. She didn't ask deep questions, but her silence gave space, and he filled it, slowly. "I used to get in trouble in middle school," Rael said after a bite. "Not for fighting, just disconnecting." Sarai raised an eyebrow. "Disappearing?" He nodded. "I'd skip class, sit under the bleachers with a notebook. I wasn't being rebellious. I just didn't feel like I fit in." "Why?" He took a long sip of water before answering. "My mom worked 2 jobs. My dad didn't talk much. We had electricity most months. But I didn't know how to explain why my shirt was always a little faded." Sarai stayed still. He went on. "So I'd write code, in pencil, on paper. Just ideas. Things I wanted to build, places I'd rather be." She didn't interrupt, didn't shift in her seat. She let him speak. "I had one teacher," he said, "who caught me once. Thought I was ditching for fun. Then she read what I was sketching. She told me, 'You're not lazy. You're solving the wrong problems in the wrong place.'" Sarai nodded slowly. "She sounds smart." She was. "I never forgot that line." He glanced at her. "You remind me of her." They walked back after eating. No heavy words. Just quiet streetlight shadows and calm steps. Before parting, Sarai said, "I think I'd like to meet more of you. Not the company, not the title." Rael's voice stayed low. "I'd like to give you that." The following Sunday, Sarai invited him to the house. Annika opened the door with one raised brow. "You brought a pie?" she asked. Rael held up the box. "Cherry. Bought, not made." She let him in anyway. They sat in the small kitchen. Annika brewed tea. Sarai sliced the pie. The 3 of them didn't try to force it. They talked about books, movies, the worst public school lunches they'd ever eaten. Annika stayed mostly quiet, but every now and then, her eyes softened when she watched Rael speak to Sarai. "And Sarai," she laughed. Out loud. A real one. Rael froze when he heard it, because it sounded like her as a child, a sound he'd never gotten to hear back then. But now he had. After dessert, he stood to leave. Sarai walked him to the door. Before he stepped outside, she asked, "What was your favorite book growing up?" He blinked. Didn't read much. But I liked Robinson Crusoe. She frowned. Really? He chuckled. Man stranded, making his own world from nothing. Felt relatable. She grinned. Still does. He smiled back. Yours? Ender's Game, she replied. The kid saves the world without knowing he's in a war. He paused. Also relatable, right? They stood in the doorway for a second longer. Then she said it. Quietly. Good night, Rael. He nodded. Good night, Sarai. He didn't expect more. But he felt it anyway. The shift. The space she was offering. Not as a gift. But as an opening. Not full trust. But a beginning. That night, Anika stood in Sarai's doorway before bed. You okay? Sarai sat on the edge of her bed, brushing out her hair. Yeah, he's strange. Anika raised a brow. Strange how? Like he's unfinished. But finally starting, Anika leaned against the doorframe. That's what showing up does. Sarai looked down. Do you think he'll stay? Anika didn't lie. I think he knows what it costs if he doesn't. The invitation came in an envelope, not an email. Sarai found it on her pillow one evening, after school. Thick cardstock, cream-colored, with her name handwritten on the front. Inside, a small card, Future Innovations Forum, Northern California Tech Roundtable Special Access Pass, Sarai Templeton, guest of Rael Donovan, and one sticky note attached. If you'd like to come, I'll be there at 9, but only if you want to. Or, she didn't answer right away. She brought the envelope to her room, stared at it, reread the note. Not an order, not an obligation, a door, half open. By morning, she'd made her decision. Anika raised her brows when Sarai walked out wearing black slacks, a white blouse and a soft tan cardigan. You're dressing up for lab hours now? Sarai smirked. Field trip. Anika didn't ask more. She just handed her a clean water bottle. The conference was held at a private business center downtown. The building shimmered with soft glass, and inside, the air smelled like expensive coffee and innovation. Rael stood by the elevator, hands in his pockets. He saw her before she spoke. You came, he said quietly. Sarai nodded. You invited. He handed her a pass. It had her name printed professionally, not daughter of, not +1, just her name. Sarai Templeton. They walked into the forum side by side. The room was filled with polished people, tech founders, product leads, investment partners, suits, watches, subtle shoes worth half a month's rent. Sarai felt the weight of the room's gaze. But Rael didn't introduce her like someone tagging along. He introduced her like this. This is Sarai. She's building something worth listening to. That's all. And no one questioned it. During a panel, she leaned over to whisper, You don't need to say more. Rael shook his head slightly. If you're worth listening to, you don't need anyone to sell you. When the networking hour began, Rael didn't hover. He stepped aside. Let her speak for herself. Sarai found herself explaining her app to 2 program managers from a college accelerator. One of them asked, Who taught you to think like this? She didn't say Rael's name. She just said, My mom gave me the foundation, and I'm learning the rest from watching people who don't talk too much, but mean it when they do. The manager smiled. That's rare. Rael watched her from across the room. He didn't smile. He just watched, like a man seeing something he didn't deserve, but was honored to witness. They left after 2 hours. No spotlight exit. No handshakes trailing them. Just 2 people walking toward the parking lot, quiet. Sarai spoke first. Thank you. For what? For not speaking for me. Rael turned to her. You didn't need me to. She paused. A year ago, I'd have been terrified in that room. You weren't today. I know. Rael looked ahead. Next time, you'll take the mic. Sarai raised an eyebrow. You think I'm ready for that? I think you were ready yesterday. Back home, Anika waited in the kitchen. How was the event? Sarai opened the fridge, grabbed a juice. then turned around. He didn't introduce me like I was his anything. Annika blinked. Sarai continued. He introduced me like I was someone who mattered. Annika said nothing, but her chest ached in a good way. Later that night, Sarai texted Rael. I might apply to that summer program the director mentioned. Rael replied, you'll get in, and if you don't, they'll regret it. Then followed up with a second text. No pressure, only if it's your path. She read both, then sent, I think I want to walk it, with you nearby. Not leading. Rael didn't respond right away. When he did, it was 3 words. That's all I hoped. Saturday afternoon, the house was quiet. Sunlight spilled across the living room floor, catching the corner of a picture frame and the edge of an old cereal box tower Sarai once built in middle school and never threw away. Rael stood at the doorway, holding a small paper bag. Annika opened it, eyebrow raised. Another pie. He shook his head. Churros. She smiled, barely, and stepped aside. She's in her room, she said. Go ahead. Sarai sat cross-legged on her carpet, her laptop open, wires and tools spread beside her. A screwdriver, a stripped keyboard, and a recycled circuit board sat mid-repair. You busy? Rael asked, stepping into the doorway. She looked up. Always. But this is a good time. He walked in slowly, stopping just short of the edge of the rug. This looks advanced. Sarai smirked. It's old. Still looks brilliant. It's one of my first builds, she said, brushing a wire aside. I used to fix parts I found in school trash bins. He lowered himself to the floor, crossing his legs slowly. You were teaching yourself at what? 9? 8.5. He whistled softly. I think I was still struggling with zip ties at that age. Sarai smiled. She showed him more. A solar-powered phone charger made from copper strips and plastic wrap. An LED-lit binder cover that once helped her find her bag in the dark. A voice recording pen with one working button. Record only, no delete. Each piece came with a story. Rael didn't interrupt once. He asked questions, but mostly he listened. These pieces, Sarai said, they're not functional anymore. Rael looked at her carefully. They don't have to be. You already learned what they had to teach. She stared at him, then said quietly, You really get it, don't you? His voice was soft. I'm trying to... Annika passed the room once, paused for a second, saw them both seated on the floor, didn't say a word. She just walked away and shut the kitchen door behind her. Sarai pulled out one last box, smaller, dusted. Inside was a framed photo she'd never hung. A picture of her and Annika at age 5, with a trophy made of paper in her hand. I wanted a dad to clap that day, she said, barely above a whisper. Didn't need him to build the trophy. Just clap. Rael didn't reach for the photo. He didn't say he was sorry. He didn't try to hug her. He simply said, You would have heard me. Her throat tightened. I think I want to hear you now. They sat together in the quiet. Nothing grand, just present. That evening, after he left, Sarai walked into the kitchen. Annika was wiping the counter. I showed him the old bills. Annika turned. All of them? Even the one with the burned battery? Why now? Sarai opened the fridge. Because I wanted him to see where I started. Annika watched her closely. And where are you now? Sarai closed the fridge. Looked at her mother. Somewhere I didn't think I'd be ready for, but I think I am. That night, Rael opened his inbox. There was a message from Sarai. Subject line, Blueprints. Inside, a folder of scanned diagrams from her old notebooks. And one sentence, This is where it all began. Thanks for stepping into it late but right. Some relationships don't start at birth. Have you ever wished someone had shown up sooner, but still felt grateful when they finally did? Sarai didn't ask for a savior. She asked for presence. Do you believe it's ever too late to become what someone needs? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story moved you, like the video and subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories, where the quietest moments hold the loudest meaning. The Donovan Tech Summit was never subtle. Held once a year, it attracted journalists, investors, and analysts from across the country. Product launches, platform demos, keynote speeches. It was Rael's stage. He never needed cue cards, but this year felt different, because this time Sarai was in the wings, and she wasn't anonymous anymore. The rumors had started weeks ago. A photo of Sarai speaking to a senior product officer had leaked on a tech forum. A line of speculation followed. Donovan Tech's secret intern? Rising STEM prodigy linked to Donovan himself. Who is Sarai Templeton? None of the articles used the word daughter, but the undertone was getting louder. Rael sat with his publicist the morning of the summit. "They're going to ask," she said, tapping her pen against her tablet. "If she's your kid. If you knew about her. If this is an image move." Rael nodded. "I'm not denying her. Do you want to confirm the relationship?" Rael paused, then said, "No, not with the words they want." He delivered his keynote cleanly. A new initiative for secure public infrastructure tools. Strong, clear, no theatrics. Then came the Q&A, and the first few questions stayed safe, until one voice stood up mid-row, a tech journalist from a leading outlet. "Mr. Donovan, there's been growing conversation about a young intern from your mentorship pipeline, Sarai Templeton. Can you speak to who she is to you?" The room, cameras pointed. Rael didn't flinch. "She's someone who deserves everything she's building, whether or not she knows it yet." He let the words hang. The reporter added, "So, are you confirming she's your daughter?" Rael took a long breath, then said, carefully, "I'm confirming she's brilliant, capable, and belongs in every room she enters. What you choose to call her doesn't change her work, and she didn't ask to be part of a headline. So respect her space, and focus on what matters." The room stilled. Some nodded. Others scribbled, but no one asked again. From the side of the stage, Sarai watched. She hadn't expected to feel much, but her throat tightened when he didn't call her daughter. Not because he denied her, but because he protected her. With precision, with clarity, with honor. Later that day, Annika called her. "You okay?" she asked. Sarai was still sitting in the back row of the conference room. "Yeah, I watched the stream." Sarai nodded. "I saw him hold a line." Annika paused. "That's how you know someone values you. They speak your name when you're ready, not when they want credit." Sarai leaned back in the chair, smiled faintly. "I think he gets that now." That night, Rael didn't text. Sarai did. "You said exactly what I needed. Nothing more." He replied, "I'll always speak how you want to be seen." She stared at that message longer than most, then typed, "So next time, maybe say, 'My daughter.' But only when I'm standing beside you." Rael's reply came 30 seconds later. Only then, and proudly, she didn't knock. Rael had already texted, "The door's open. Come in whenever you're ready." Sarai stepped inside. The house was sleek, quiet, understated. No marble waterfall, no gold fixtures. Just tall windows, warm light, shelves full of old tech pieces and first-generation devices, all worn, kept, dusted. A man who built an empire, but still kept the things he once tinkered with alone. Rael stepped out from the kitchen, wiping his hands with a dish towel. "I didn't cook," he said immediately. "But I did order smart." Sarai smirked. Smart meaning what? Thai. No spice panic this time. She followed him into the kitchen. He'd laid everything out already. Steamed rice, peanut chicken, vegetable rolls, and a cold drink with lemon on the side. Sarai sat down. No hesitation. He poured water. She opened the box of rolls. And just like that, they shared their first meal in his home. No fanfare, no performance, no big speech, just food between them, and comfort that didn't need to be named. After they ate, Sarai glanced around the living room. "You keep your awards in a drawer or something?" Rael smiled. "Top shelf, behind the old modem." "Why?" "Because none of that built this place." She looked at him, then looked around again. "I thought it'd be louder in here." He nodded slowly. "I made it quiet on purpose." Most of my world isn't. She walked over to the shelf, scanned the books, the gadgets, the labeled bins, then stopped at a framed photo. Old. A young man, Rael, maybe in his 20s, standing outside a run-down community center, laptop in one hand, hoodie too big for his frame. Where's this? Back when I ran weekend classes in South Bay, before I could afford a server, Sarai turned the frame in her hands. You look lighter. I was tired, broke, and eating from vending machines. And lighter, he chuckled. Maybe. That version of me didn't know how much I'd carry later. She returned the frame gently to its place, then turned back. You've carried a lot, but I'm not asking you to carry me. Rael met her eyes. I never thought you were. I'm not a symbol. I know. I'm not a fix. I don't want you to be. Sarai exhaled. I'm not here for pity or to fill some regret-shaped hole. Rael nodded. You're here because you chose to be. She nodded back. That's right. They sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that didn't need explaining. Then Sarai asked, Do you have anything of mine? Rael blinked. What do you mean? From before. Something you printed, saved, screenshot, watched. He stood up, walked to his office, returned with a file. Inside, a printout of her first app sketch from the mentorship archive, a clipped article from a school paper with her quote circled, a photo, blurry, candid, of her speaking to a room, mid-sentence. Sarai flipped through, her voice caught. You saved this? Rael sat across from her. I didn't know how to be in your past, so I kept pieces of it until I could show up. She stared at the photo in her hand, then said, You didn't show up with fireworks, just presents. That's the only thing that lasts. Before she left, she stood by the door. No rush. No goodbye yet. She glanced back. You can say it now. Rael stepped forward. Say what? She nodded once. Say it. He didn't ask twice. He looked her in the eye. My daughter. Sarai's lips twitched into the smallest smile. Okay. Then she opened the door, stepped into the night, and left it open, just slightly behind her. The email came on a Tuesday afternoon. Sarai was at her desk, headphones in, editing the mobile version of her app when the notification pinged. Subject, National STEM Youth Impact Nomination. Confirmation required. She read it once. Then again. Then a third time, slower. Her name had been submitted for one of the most competitive national awards for student-led tech impact, an award given to only 5 high school students each year. She didn't even know she'd been nominated. Annika came home that night with groceries and a long sigh. Sarai met her at the door, holding up her phone. I think you need to read this. Annika slipped off her shoes, scanned the screen, then looked at her daughter. Did you apply? Sarai shook her head. No. Someone else did. Rael hadn't said anything. No message. No hint. But Sarai had a feeling. The next morning, Rael got a call from the award committee. They wanted a statement, just a few sentences, how he felt about Sarai's work, how her contributions reflected his mentorship initiative, maybe even a comment on her potential. He listened, then paused, and said, Can I call you back in 5? He hung up. You should be the one they quote, he said. Annika blinked. Me. You've been there for every step of this. You made her. You're her father. I'm not the reason she became who she is. You are. Annika didn't argue. Didn't thank him either. She just said, Give them my number. The committee published a short press article later that week. Nominee, Sarai Templeton Project, Clean Slate, Data-Protected Scholarship App. Quote, From her mother, she was always building something from nothing. I just cleared space on the floor and made sure she had light. Sarai read the article at school, then walked outside, found a quiet corner near the stairwell, and sat alone. She didn't cry, but her chest felt full in a way that had nothing to do with trophies or recognition. She texted Rael. You gave her the spotlight. Not many men would have done that. He replied, It wasn't mine to take. She raised you. I'm just here to witness. Sarai stared at the message, then typed, "You're not just witnessing anymore." That evening, she showed Annika the full nomination packet. It included a profile photo, an updated app summary, and a list of mentors. "I left that part blank," she told her mom. Annika raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "I didn't want to name someone because of formality." "Fair. But now, I want to." Annika folded her arms. "And?" Sarai smiled. "Can I list two?" The invitation arrived in a slim black envelope, lined with silver. Sarai handed one to her mother and one to Rael, the same way she had opened the door to them, calm, simple, without ceremony. "This is the gala invite," she said. "You're both listed as my guests of honor." Rael blinked. "You're allowed two." "I requested 3 chairs." Annika looked at her sideways. "Why 3? Sarai shrugged. "I want the third one to stay empty." Rael asked, "For who?" Sarai answered, "For all the versions of me that had to wait." The event was held at a museum-turned-tech venue. Soft lighting, floor-to-ceiling screens, white tables with gold-rimmed place cards. Sarai wore a simple dark green dress, clean sneakers, no makeup except for a hint of clear gloss. Rael showed up in a navy suit, no tie. Annika wore grey, with a quiet necklace Sarai once gave her on a birthday they could barely afford to celebrate. They sat at the same table, side by side, no space left between them, except the third chair Sarai left untouched. She stood when they called her name, walked up the stairs, heels soft against the velvet stage. She didn't unfold a paper, didn't read a script, just looked out, took the mic and said, "Most people thank their mentors, their teachers, their sponsors." She paused. "I thank the woman who sat beside me on the floor while I soldered wires to old batteries." She looked at Annika. "She never asked for credit, but she's the reason I knew how to build anything that matters." Annika didn't blink, but her hands stayed folded tight. Sarai continued, "I also thank the man who didn't try to fix me once he found me, but sat quietly until I said I was ready." Now she turned slightly toward Rael. "He taught me that showing up isn't loud, it's consistent." Rael lowered his eyes for a second, then met hers again. She turned back to the room, and finally, she glanced at the empty chair near the front. "I want to thank the girl who learned how to take care of herself without applause. You waited a long time for someone to clap. I hope you heard it tonight." The room went still, no dramatic music, no standing ovation yet, just silence, like the moment when truth lands before sound follows. Sarai stepped down, walked back to her table, sat between the two people who shaped her, one in silence, one in sacrifice. She didn't say anything, and neither did they. They just sat in it, together. Later that evening, after the photos, the dinner, and the congratulations, Sarai leaned over to both of them and whispered, "Thank you for not making me choose between you." Annika touched her hand once, soft. Rael gave her a single nod, and they walked out as 3, 2 parents and 1 daughter who finally knew what it felt like to be claimed by both. The flyer was small, printed on standard paper, taped to the front of the community library window. Free youth coding workshop led by Sarai Templeton, sponsored by Future. Builders Initiative time, 3 p.m. location, main room, Saturday. Rael found it by accident. He was dropping off a donation check under a different name, quietly like he did now, and saw the flyer through the glass. He didn't text her. He just circled the date on his calendar and cleared the afternoon. When Saturday came, the room was already buzzing, folding chairs in rows, laptops open on scratched tables, wires and extension cords running from every outlet, kids from 8 to 16 leaning over keyboards trying to make shapes move on screens. And, in the center, Sarai, hair pulled back, t-shirt and jeans, lanyard ID clipped to her collar. She didn't look nervous. She looked like she belonged. She was walking between rows, crouching beside a 4th grader stuck on a loop function, adjusting a line of syntax, showing 2 teenagers how to animate a hover effect. No script, no slides, just clarity and warmth. Rael sat in the very back, No name tag, no announcement, no one even noticed him. Except Sarai. She spotted him across the room and smiled. Not wide, not forced, just enough. At one point, a student raised her hand and asked, "What made you want to start teaching?" Sarai paused, then said, "Because someone once watched me work without interrupting, and I learned that people grow faster when they feel seen, not managed." The student nodded, and Rael looked down at his hands. After the session ended, Sarai stayed back to help the librarian reset the room. Rael waited until the last child left, then walked over slowly. "You didn't mention you were doing this." Sarai zipped up her bag. "Didn't think I had to." "You didn't." She looked at him. "But you came anyway." He nodded. She studied his expression. Was it strange, watching me teach? Rael gave the smallest shake of his head. No. It felt overdue. They stepped outside together. The sun was low, the street quiet. Rael said, "You led that room. I was supposed to. You owned it. I wanted them to know they could." He looked at her. "You did?" At a stoplight nearby, a few students walked past. One waved. "Bye, Miss Sarai." She waved back, then glanced up at Rael. "You know," she said, "I used to think I wanted someone to tell me what to do, so I wouldn't mess up." Rael tilted his head. "And now I just want someone who'll stay nearby, just in case I fall." He nodded. "I'll be there." "But you're not falling." "I know." They stood on the corner for another minute. Then Sarai said, "You never told me what your first teaching moment was." Rael thought about it, then smiled faintly. "I taught a group of 8th graders how to build a calculator app that didn't crash when they pressed 2 buttons at once." Sarai raised an eyebrow. "Did it work?" "Absolutely not." "But they laughed, and they learned." She smirked. "So, we've both been here before." Rael nodded. "Yeah. But it's better this time." The building didn't look like much from the outside. Brick walls, narrow windows. A steel sign above the door with the words, "The North Side Code Room, no logo." No press, no cameras, just a clean sidewalk and a door buzzer. Rael turned the key and held the door for Sarai. She stepped inside. The air smelled like books and warm dust. The lights flicked on slowly, revealing long tables, open workstations, small. Rows of refurbished monitors, bins labeled with cables, batteries, headphones. On one wall hung a banner, barely visible. "Every kid deserves a screen they can call theirs." Sarai walked in deeper. "You built this?" Rael nodded. "Started it 9 years ago. Quietly. No press. No need." She turned slowly in the center of the room. "Why show me now?" Rael folded his arms. "Because I don't want to run it anymore. I want someone better." Sarai froze. "You're handing this off to me?" "I'm asking you to make it better than I could." She moved to the back wall, ran her fingers across the edge of an old desktop tower with faded stickers on it. "Who comes here?" "Kids. Neighborhood volunteers, teachers, mentors, quiet builders. People who don't care about LinkedIn bios." Sarai smiled. "You built a home for the version of me that didn't know where to go. I built it for the version of me too." There was a back office, small but tidy. In it, a whiteboard filled with scribbles, budgets, lesson outlines, network configurations, outreach programs. She scanned it slowly, then turned around. "You really trust me with this?" Rael didn't hesitate. "I trust you more than I trust most of the people I've paid." She laughed once, a real one, then went quiet. After a moment she said, "If I say yes, I don't want this to be your project anymore. It won't be. I don't want your name on the sign. It never was." She faced him. "I want to rebrand, expand, add weekend labs, hire local trainers, make it mobile." His answer came without delay. "Then I'll fund it. But you'll run it." Sarai blinked, then whispered, "Okay." They sat in the middle of the empty room that night. No rush, no lights beyond the ones overhead. She asked him one question before they left. "Why did you never talk about this?" Rael looked around. Because not everything that matters belongs in a headline. Later that week, Sarai drafted a new name for the center, the Temple Room of Free. Lab space for students who build without applause. She sent the mock-up to Rael. No comment. Just the image. He replied, "Perfect. Quietly powerful. Just like you." The room wasn't full of executives. It was full of folding chairs, a makeshift projector, laptops plugged into surge protectors, streamers cut by hand, no budget for banners, only real people, kids and teachers and neighbors who believed in showing up. The Temple Room was opening, and Sarai was running it. She stood in the center with a clipboard, delegating with calm confidence. "You two handle sign-up. Keep the laptops to one table. Anyone under 12 gets paired with a volunteer. Tell them it's okay to mess up." Rael stood in the back, dressed simple, no name tag, just him. Anika stood near the wall, arms folded, watching, and smiling. "Feels like her," Anika said softly. Rael glanced sideways. "That's the goal. She's not nervous. She never was. She just didn't have room to stretch before." Anika looked at him carefully, then said, "She trusts you." Rael didn't answer. He didn't need to. But Anika wasn't finished. "You've been quiet since this started," she said. "Quiet's the only thing I can offer that doesn't interrupt her." Anika's voice dropped. "When I found out I was pregnant, I told myself not to expect anything from you." Rael's jaw tightened, but he stayed still. "I told myself she wouldn't need anything you hadn't given." He nodded once, still listening. Anika looked down. "I was right, but I didn't expect you to become someone worth inviting in." He looked at her now. "You did everything." She shrugged. "So did you." Eventually, they stood there, shoulder to shoulder, not touching, but the air between them had changed. It was no longer stiff, no longer filled with what-ifs. Just truth and peace. Anika turned toward him before walking away. "You showed up without asking to rewrite the story." Rael's voice was low. "I never wanted to rewrite it." "What did you want?" "To be useful." She gave him one final look. "Well then, you are." The launch ran until dusk. Sarai led the orientation, shared her own story in short bursts, and ended the day by standing under the whiteboard with a small marker in hand. She wrote, "No one owns the light here. You're allowed to shine," and then said, "Let's build something." Later, as they packed up, she walked over to Rael. "You didn't speak today. I didn't need to. You were still in every corner. That's how foundations work. You build under people, not over them." She stared at him. "You're good at that now." "I'm still learning." She smiled. "Keep learning then. I like you better this way." The folding chairs were stacked. The snacks cleared. The sign-up tables folded and pushed to the walls. The Temple Room, empty now, felt bigger than it had during the launch. Not just in space, in spirit. Sarai sat cross-legged in the center of the floor. Rael stepped in and stopped short when he saw her. She looked up. "You can sit. I don't own the carpet." He walked over, lowered himself beside her, careful with the stiffness in his knees. A minute later, Anika entered with a box of spare markers and halted at the sight. Two people she never imagined sharing a room quietly, together. "I always thought healing had to look like forgiveness," Sarai said. Rael didn't speak. She turned her palm up to the ceiling. "But sometimes it just looks like being allowed to choose. With no weight, no guilt." Anika set the marker box down, then eased herself to the floor too. It was the first time the three of them had sat like this. Not as enemies, not even as family. Just witnesses to each other. Rael looked around the room. No branding, no board. Just a room and hope. Sarai gave a soft laugh. "Hope costs less than glass walls." He rubbed his palm against his knee. "I didn't know if you'd ever want to build something with me again." "You didn't build this with me," she said. "I built it because you stopped trying to control the story." That landed, but not as pain, as truth. She reached to her side and pulled out a small white envelope. "I've been holding this," she said. Rael frowned. She handed it to Anika. Anika blinked. What is it? A copy of the original registration papers, Sarai said quietly. The name, the date, and the note Rael left back then. Rael's face stiffened. You kept it? Sarai nodded. And I wrote something new on the back. Anika opened the paper. Her breath caught. On one side, the old hospital tag. Sarai Mira Temple. Date, weight, mother's name. And Rael's note, if you're reading this, I wasn't strong enough. On the other side, Sarai's handwriting. If you're reading this, I chose light anyway. Anika's eyes shimmered. Rael exhaled slowly. You don't owe me anything, Sarai said to both of them. But I wanted to leave a record, not of regret, of what we survived, what we outgrew, what we finally did right. She looked at Rael. You didn't break me. He nodded. You taught me silence doesn't fix pain. She looked at Anika. You didn't steal me. Anika's lips trembled. I never wanted to. I know, Sarai said. I was just too little to tell you. They sat there a while, not hugging, not crying, just being, as if the story no longer needed a twist to feel whole. Anika stood first. I should go. Let you two close the night. Rael didn't stop her. Neither did Sarai. As the door shut behind her, Rael looked at his daughter. What now? She smiled softly. Now? I build. You stay out of the way. And someday, when someone walks into this room afraid they're too far gone, I'll tell them my dad used to think that too. He blinked. Sarai stood. I'm not saving you, and I don't need you to save me. She walked toward the door, keys in hand. But you can lock up with me. And Rael did. No speech, no apology, no big gesture. Just a shared room, and a light neither of them had to fight for anymore. He left after one night, but years later, one interview changed everything. Have you ever faced a moment where truth arrived too late, but still demanded an answer? Rael walked away from responsibility, but fate gave his daughter the strength to walk in, unannounced, undeniable. What would you do if someone you never met turned out to be your greatest legacy? If this story moved you, don't leave quietly. Like, share, and drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories, where powerful stories always find their voice.